Psalm 51, verse 2 says, "Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity." There it is. Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity. Now, the scriptures use various words for sin, one of those being sin, iniquity, transgressions. But iniquity is something that we don't really use in our everyday language. We if we're going to talk about sin, we usually use the word sin, perhaps transgression, although that's not very common either. And so sometimes it's good to just focus in on a word. And why is there a different word for the same thing? Why do we use synonyms? Well, uh, iniquity has a little more of the idea than transgressions or sin of the guilt, the lingering shame and guilt that result as we sin. We bear this iniquity. We have this weight on us. If you think of Pilgrim's Progress, you think of Christian as he's traveling on his pilgrimage with early on with that big load on his back, and he has that iniquity backpack. And so that's a visual for you. Another, Shakespeare, he, to go, extra biblical here, we have Macbeth who says, "Will the ocean wash this blood clean from my hand?" If you're familiar with that play, that Shakespearean play, it's Macbeth who kills the king, and he doesn't really want to do it, but he does it, and then as a result of becoming a murderer, he then begins murdering other people because he is bearing this iniquity. And that's when he says, the oceans can't even wash the blood off my hands. And then Lady Macbeth, who is an accomplice in the murder, she says, "Out, Spot, out, I say. Who would have thought the old man to have had so much blood in him?" So there's some famous lines from Shakespeare that touch on this idea of iniquity, that when we spill blood, um, uh, we have this guilt, this iniquity that we bear as a result of that. But in Genesis chapter 4, we have the first murderer being Cain, which happens to be my namesake. Um, not one of my favorite references. Um, but Genesis 4:13, uh, Cain says to the Lord, "My punishment is more than I can bear." And isn't that true? The wages of sin is death, separation from God, to be cut off from Him, to be cursed. And surely this is more than we can bear, for we're stuck. We can't get out. And we can try to cover it up. We can try to, like Adam and Eve did, they tried to put the fig leaves over and cover up their rebellion. But the fact of the matter was, is they were guilty, and they bore the iniquity of their sin. And there was no way to undo that. And that's why God had to intervene. And even with Adam and Eve, he gave them the skin of an animal as blood was shed on their behalf to give a covering, and that sign of what was to come, which Jeremiah speaks to, as Jeremiah the prophet is speaking to Israel in their place of captivity. And he says, "I will cleanse them." He's speaking prophetically, as God says through him, rather. "I will cleanse them from all their iniquity by which they have sinned against me." And so this looking forward to and this longing for, well, when is this going to come? When will you cleanse us from all of our iniquity? So fast forward to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 27. And in verse 24, Pilate washes his hands and he says, "This guy is innocent. And so I'm symbolically washing my hands of the blood that is about to be spilled in this crucifixion. And then the people say, in the most ironic fashion, they say, his blood, Jesus's blood, be on us and on our children. And not knowing what they spoke a blessing on themselves and on their children, for it's by his blood that we have the remission of sins, the removing of the iniquity, the guilt, the shame, the cleansing from all unrighteousness. It's by his blood. And surely, as we can be more informed now that we know what the crucifixion was about, looking back on that very special historical day indeed, we look back and we say, yeah, may his blood be on us and on our children, not as a curse to him, but that he became a curse for us, that he would forgive us for our sin. No one would die in my place. I would have to bear that on my own. And surely I would, if I wouldn't receive the gift, then I would be bearing the guilt of my sin as I stand before God one day, resurrected unto death. But he made a way. He made a way of salvation. And I and you can be washed clean by his blood. So no need to scrub your hands clean. No reason to go crazy trying to get off the blood stains of your iniquity and your rebellious heart and your sin against God and against others. No need for that, because he has cleansed you with his blood if you have put your faith in Christ and Christ alone. So, brother and sister, rejoice in that today. Rejoice that you have been purchased. Your iniquity has been washed away and your sin has been forgiven. God bless you. Rejoice in your salvation. And until next time on Morning Manna.